Hi, ladies. Welcome to Beautiful Bible Studies, the book of Ruth, Chapter 2. So last week, we took a look at Ruth Chapter 1, and we followed Ruth and Naomi's journey out of the country of Moab and into Bethlehem of Judah. This week, the women are settling in Bethlehem and really figuring out how they're going to survive in their return to Naomi's home country. And of course, we are looking at this book through the eyes of friendship. What can we learn about how to establish and grow godly friendships through Ruth and Naomi's relationship with one another? So, this week, my first observation through Ruth and Naomi's lives, as far as friendship goes, is a friend provides. So Ruth volunteers to go out and glean the fields in order to gather enough grain for Ruth and Naomi to survive into the next harvest season. So that was no small sacrifice on Ruth's part. I think that it's good to remember, especially with stories in the Bible that we're very familiar with. If you were raised in the church like I was, you've probably heard this story from the time you were really little. I honestly could not tell you the first time I heard the story because it's so very familiar to me. But the reality is that these were two women. You know, they weren't characters out of a storybook. They were women. And Ruth's choice to go out into this field put herself in danger. So as a single woman out in the field, she would have been around the workers, the laborers in the harvest field, and that put her in a very vulnerable position, as you can imagine. So she made this sacrifice for her friend Naomi. So my first observation was a friend provides. Ruth put herself at risk in order to provide not just food for herself, but also for Naomi's needs. The second thing we can learn about friendship from Ruth Chapter 2 that I observed, if you observe anything else, share it in the comments because I would love to hear how God is speaking to you through this chapter as well. So a friend is rewarded for her good deeds. Immediately we see that Ruth she goes out without direction really from Naomi. She just says she's going out into the harvest fields to glean or gather the grain that is left over after the harvesters have collected. And she finds herself in Boaz's field, not having any idea who that is or that he would know who she is and return her kindness. So God, when Ruth made that sacrifice for Naomi, when she put herself in that vulnerable position, God rewarded her for her good deed. So we see that right away. And then we can also see that in what Boaz says to her in chapter 2, in verse 12. He says, "May the Lord repay you for what you have done." So we can, as we sow into our friendships, as we make personal sacrifices for our friends, we can count on the Lord to reward us and to provide for us. So that is a spiritual truth and a kingdom principle in God's kingdom. So we can count on that. Now, we don't do kind things in order to get the reward. I don't think that's really the point here. You know, we do it out of the kindness of our heart in order to demonstrate our love for our friends and also God's love for them. A story comes to my mind, and I have a dear friend. Her name is Tracy, and I was going through a hard time. I was very ill. And I remember my friend she just showed up one day, and she had these butterfly kits for my kids, and she gave them to them. And I was so touched by that kindness, because I was too ill to do those little extra things that I would normally want to do for my children. And here swoops in my friend with these gifts for my children that were a great joy to us during a time when I was physically weak and not able to do much. We got to watch our caterpillars grow and turn into butterflies, and it was a beautiful experience and a reminder that that I was loved and that God was providing for me. So, and that was really only one of many kind acts that she did during that time frame. So it can be anything. You can show up with a hot cup of coffee when you know your friend's having a tough day, or there's many, many ways we can sow into the friendships and the lives of the women around us. And when we do it to honor God, and He will then in turn reward us by providing for us and loving us the way He does. Okay, and the third observation I made in chapter 2 about friendship is this: a friend shares her wisdom. I love that Naomi says to Ruth, this is a good thing, go back to Boaz's field. This is a good thing for you to do. Sometimes we just need that extra encouragement, right? A friend to say, yeah, you're on the right track. I see God's path for you in this, or, I see God's hand at work in your life, or I see this gift in you. Pursue that, I just think that that is no small thing. That is a tremendous gift to reinforce the work of God in each other. So I encourage you, when you see God doing something in one of your friends, take a minute and point it out, or if you see them struggling to make a decision, share what you know. Don't hold back, because, that's what friends do. Share your experience so that we can all learn from each other. God made us to be relational people, and sowing into one another is one of the great blessings of this life. Okay, so that is all I had for chapter 2 this week, but I do have a couple of questions for you. The first one is, how did you see God in Ruth chapter 2? So as you were reading chapter 2 this week, what stood out to you? Did God speak something into your heart like He did with Ashley last week in chapter 1? Or, did you gain something different that you hadn't seen before? And my second question is this: can you think of a time when a friend shared provision or wisdom with you? Tell us about it so we can celebrate together. That's all I have for this evening. Thanks so much for being here. And remember, keep in His Word and keep growing, because the world needs the extraordinary gifts God created in you. Good night.